comments. Mr. Brown, Delta Counties Coalition.
Good morning, Doug Brown, Delta Counties Coalition. The thing I'm struggling with on this is really what you get out of it. Typically, if you have a project that goes through the process, you go through the CEQA process, the local agency has to approve, say, a conditional use permit, and they assume there will be other permits, maybe core permits. And if there is subsequently some sort of violation of those permits, then there's a process for ensuring that that violation is corrected. Either the core process, if there's a problem with the conditional use permit, then the local agency can get involved. And so what you're saying is, you have a violation at some point in the future, and is the intent that you are able to bring that back to the Stewardship Council so you can be the enforcing agency as well as the Corps or the local building authority, and that's what I'm struggling with. What is the benefit of this?
The co-equal goals are required now by state law, and it is state law that state and local agencies shall be consistent with the Delta Plan if they have a covered action. We have certain activities that are the core functions of our activities, and in reviewing covered actions, we wish to be assured that the state or local agency proposing the covered action has taken these into account. It's probably, I'll say this, there is considerable dispute, including from your clients, about whether state interest should in fact be a part of the evaluation, particularly of local land use issues. That is, however, the state law, and we're trying to deal with it, set up a process that simplifies the issue and respects the state law while not unduly burdening everyone else. But we cannot ignore the mandates of state law. And accordingly, this process in its ramifications is designed to do that. What is our enforcement tool? A finding that you are not consistent with the Delta Plan. Now, does that stop your project? Well, you have to go back and answer the issue, but it doesn't, the statute doesn't say once a finding's been made, you may never do anything like that. It doesn't say that. You agree that? Okay.
That process makes sense to me. That makes
well, it's
sense.
In the statute.
No, well, maybe that's why it makes sense. It's in the statute. But as far as this process of this certification of compliance with laws, I see that differently in that it's something a local agency, you're asking them to do, which they would typically do. They wouldn't approve a project that would be inconsistent with the law. If you need a core fill permit, they're going to say, applicant, you need to get this permit, or they need to get it themselves. And if they violate that permit, the Corps has a process for dealing with that permit violation. And if it came to the Stewardship Council, and you said it was consistent with the co-equal goals, then this certification it just seems a little shallow to me as far as what it provides the Stewardship Council.
State or local, this is Water Code Section 85225. A state or local public agency that proposes to undertake a covered action prior to initiating the implementation of that covered action shall prepare a written certification of consistency with detailed findings as to whether the covered action is consistent with the Delta Plan and shall submit the certification to the council. Now that's
and that makes
clear.
Perfect sense.
And we are trying to define it. And the issue here is the covered action consistent and in compliance with existing law? You've heard about this before. If it involves a water issue, is the agency requesting the water being exported from the Delta, fulfilling its obligation under existing state law to conserve and use its best resources? Yes or no? The agency has an opinion. They'll say, yes, it's consistent. We take a look at it. We're just trying...
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's when you start to identify a requirement to comply with all future laws where I think we have a concern, because there's a presumption that the local agency will assume this is consistent with current law, and that any applicant would be required to comply with any specific laws related to other permits. And so requiring the local agency to say you will be consistent with all future laws is just something outside of their ability to do and to actually control. And so you're not getting a lot out of that. I just don't see a lot of benefit to that. And it's...
Let me give you another example. Later on, the requirement is for urban development in flood-threatened areas, a minimum of 200-year flood protection is required by this plan. This is a staff suggestion we'll talk about in the future.
Yeah.
The local agency may think that's inappropriate. Is it unfair to ask them to comply with the existing state law on 200-year flood protection?
No, I think it's perfectly appropriate to say they have to comply with existing state law.
Okay. And so you're just talking about new laws?
Well, I'm talking about future laws. You're saying now and into the future the project will comply with all laws. And I just don't see a lot of benefit to that, to the Stewardship Council, because the local agency can't control that.
But you heard the council. I think the notion of every new law in the future is likely to not appear quite that way in the revised language.
Well,
is my hunch.
I think we would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chair,
Don.
just